So, yeah. Okay, so this is just off the dome. Okay, I don't have a script written. I'm just gonna like spitball here. Sorry, I haven't been making a lot of videos on this channel for a while. I'm focusing more on my short film channel. Here's a 1-second clip of my new short film coming out, by the way. You know, I only want to do videos when there's a topic that interests me, and this topic kind of interested me to talk about, so I'm going to talk about it. So James Gunn and Peter Safran, as you guys know, are the new heads of the DC universe. They run DC Studios together, and what I was under the assumption of was that this was going to be a hard reboot. Henry Cavill is no longer Superman. Wonder Woman is no longer Gal Gadot. You know, this is a clean slate. A clean slate. Come to my surprise, via today, by James Gunn's DC Studios Slate announcement, that certain films that are coming out, like The Flash, Shazam 2, Aquaman 2, Blue Beetle, those are still canon and still part of the new DCU. But what about, like, Henry Cavill basically appearing in Shazam, the first one? It's confusing. This doesn't really make any sense. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. So I thought that what I thought was there was going to be a hard reset on the entire thing, which I know would have been controversial for sure, but at least I would have understood it. I would have been like, okay, I get it. The DC, let's just call it the DCEU, which was the previous DC universe, the Zack Snyder verse, if you want to call it that. That was a mess. It was a mess. It was all over the place, right? So it was all over the place in terms of quality, at least. But in terms of continuity, it wasn't that bad. It was just all over the place in terms of quality. So I would have understood if they just pressed the reset button and made it a hard reboot altogether where everyone is recast and they're doing new versions of everybody. Yes, it would have been annoying to have another version of Batman, another version of Wonder Woman, another version of Superman, which we're getting anyway. We're getting a new version of Batman and Superman. But it would have been annoying, but I would have understood it. I would have been like, I get it. But it's strange to me that they're doing like this soft reboot kind of thing where some of the actors are staying on. Like apparently Shazam 2 is part of the DCU. Does that make Shazam 1 part of the DCU? Which Henry Cavill, I mean, his face doesn't appear, but he basically appears. And then The Flash is part of the DCU, but like Ben Affleck's Batman is supposed to appear in The Flash. So it's like, but he's no longer part of the DCU. It's just confusing to me. I'm just really, really confused about this DC slate. My friend David made a much better video about this. I'm going to link his video in the description. He brings up a lot of really good points that I agree with. One thing that I didn't even think about that he brought up is the fact that Superman, they're going for a younger version of Superman, and they're going for like this origin story. Maybe not like the full-blown origin, but like, you know, the early days of Superman, which is fine, whatever, okay? But then Batman already has Damian as his Robin. Damian is like the fourth Robin. So it's like Batman is like old at this point. He already has a kid, so Superman's going to be like really young compared to Batman, and that's going to be a little strange to me. I don't know how I feel about that. Unless they make Damian like the first Robin, like, you know, they rewrite it, they retcon it like that, which would be, I don't know how I would feel about that. I don't think I would like that, because to me Dick Grayson is always Robin, then Jason Todd, then Tim Drake. Even Stephanie Brown I'll take over Damian. Damian's personally not one of my favorite Robins. But it is cool to see a Robin on the big screen, like, you know, after Batman and Robin, you know, like a serious take on Robin. That's cool. But like, I'm just confused over the whole idea of this being like a soft reboot kind of thing. In my personal opinion, I would have rather, even though I'm not the biggest fan of the Snyderverse or the DCEU, I'm not the biggest fan. I don't like Man of Steel. I know it's a little controversial. I know. I don't like Man of Steel. I don't like Batman vs Superman. I don't like the canonical Justice League, which is the Justice League 2017 movie. I don't like Wonder Woman 1984. I don't like the first Suicide Squad movie. I'm not a huge fan of the Snyderverse / DCEU, but I would have rather they continue it rather than do like this soft reboot type thing. Either continue it or set a hard reboot button, draw the line in the sand, and say this is it. This is the hard reboot. Everyone's recast. We're starting from scratch. This is ground zero. This is the start of something completely brand new. I would have respected that because that's what I was expecting. That's what many people were expecting when Henry Cavill was announced that Superman was no longer going to be, or that Henry Cavill's no longer going to be Superman. So it's just really confusing to me. And let's talk about something else. So what's going to happen when they release the DCU box set? Because, you know, Marvel has amazing box sets of Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, and then they have the Infinity Saga box set, right? It makes sense. It's just all the Marvel, it's just all the Marvel phases leading up to this grand finale, Endgame, and it's all the Marvel films, all like 26 of them or whatever, in this one contained package. If they do a box set of the DC universe, what's going to be the first film in that universe? What's going to be the first film that you're supposed to watch to understand the story canonically? It's a little confusing to me. And like, is Man of Steel going to be the first film still? Or is it going to be, you know, Creature Commandos, which is the first thing that's coming out in the DCU slate, Gods and Monsters? Or is frickin' Shazam 2 the first thing that's supposed to be part of Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters? Because I don't know. No, wait, because I remember James Gunn said that Aquaman 2 and The Flash and everything lead into Chapter 1. So what does that make everything before Chapter 1? Because you're still kind of acknowledging that The Suicide Squad and Peacemaker is still canon because you have Amanda Waller coming back in her own TV show. So it's like, so does that make the first Suicide Squad still canon? Because, but then but Batman appears in the first Suicide Squad. They mention Superman. It's so confusing to me. I don't get it. Some people I saw online are actually really excited about this slate, and that's cool for them. I am very happy. I love James Gunn. I'm a huge James Gunn fan. I love Guardians of the Galaxy. I love the Suicide Squad. You know, even some of his lesser-known films like Slither, Super, Tromeo and Juliet even. Like, the man is a great writer and director. He's a very creative person, and I love him. So this is not an attack against James Gunn. I don't want you to think that this is some troll attacking James Gunn. I am not like that at all. I appreciate what James Gunn is doing because James Gunn has a very hard task ahead of him, which is building a cinematic universe, something that Marvel took 10 years, a whole decade to do. And now all of a sudden they just then they start to try and play catch up with Marvel, and they do all this stuff, and they have all this good stuff, but also bad stuff, and then they bring in James Gunn. They're like, hey, can you fix this mess for us? It's like, it's difficult, because you want to please people, but you also want to just, you know, tell good stories for the sake of telling good stories, and I get it. So I totally get, you know, that James Gunn had a big challenge ahead of him. So I'm not dissing James Gunn or Peter Safran by any means. It's just, this is my personal opinion about the DC slate. I was excited yesterday thinking, okay, this is going to turn people around. This is going to turn me around. And for some people, it did turn them around. But for me, it kind of did the opposite. It just confused me more. I thought this was meant to simplify things. I thought this was going to be a hard reboot that said, like, this is ground zero, we're starting from scratch, but that's not it. So let's go through some of the things that I have a problem with. So let's take the first part of Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, Creature Commandos. You know, let's go on a side tangent for a second. James Gunn loves his obscure characters, and I totally get it. That's totally fine. Guardians of the Galaxy, I mean, I knew who they were because I'm a comic book geek, but if you asked someone before the movie who are the Guardians of the Galaxy, they would have been like, who? Even before 2008, you asked someone who's Thor, or like Vision, or Scarlet Witch, and they would have been like, who? You know, but now they're all household names. So I love when obscure characters get their own film. I do. I really, really do. But it's a bit strange to me how you're starting Phase 1, or the Slate 1, Chapter 1, with these all these obscure characters. You know what I'm saying? I feel like you should really kind of set the big kahunas, the big guys should get their own films, which I understand they don't want to do because they already did that back in, you know, starting in 2013 with Man of Steel. They started with Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman, so it's like if we do another Superman and Batwoman and Wonder Woman at the beginning of this phase, it's going to be like, ugh, again. But I feel like they could have done it because if you look at something like Spider-Man Tom Holland, which was just rebooted after like only 3 or 4 years after Andrew Garfield, which in and of itself was a reboot only 3 or 4 years after freaking 2007's Spider-Man 3, 2007, 2012, so whatever. I feel like as long as the character is good and the movie is good, people will still watch it. You know, they still would watch it and they would still accept it. So that whole like, oh, another Batman, another Superman, another Wonder Woman, I feel like that kind of stigma would have left people's minds if the films were good and well written, which they very well could be because James Gunn is an amazing writer and he's at the helm of most of this stuff, you know, but he likes his obscure characters and that's fine, you know, and Marvel had no choice but to start with their more obscure characters because their more non-obscure characters like Spider-Man and X-Men were owned by Sony and Fox. Sony still owns Spider-Man, so a lot of their big characters, you know, I'm kind of going against my own point now because I'm saying like the B characters like Iron Man was a B character back in 2008, but now he's an A-list character. He's probably the biggest A-list character in Marvel, you know, because of the movie. So who's to say that Creature Commandos isn't going to be the next big thing in DC? I don't know. I'm kind of going against my own point here. I'm just kind of rattling off the top of my head. So it can go either way. It can go either way. The thing that I want to mention also about Creature Commandos and other things like the television shows and stuff like that is, so I'm not the biggest fan of transmedia. And for those of you who don't know what transmedia is a story, a piece of content that's told through different mediums, such as video games, television shows, movies, card games, you know, all that stuff. So we have a singular story that's told through all of these different things, through all these different mediums. And I'm not the biggest fan of that because I don't want to have to play this board game or I don't want to have to play this video game to understand the plot line of this movie that I'm going to watch. You know? And things like television shows, I feel like you can get away with a lot more. Like television shows and movies are like interconnected a lot more, so because they're both live action, so I can be like, okay, so people can watch the show, they can watch the movie, but if you're asking people to go read comic books that tie into your movie directly, that's going to be a hard sell for me, you know? And I don't know, some people may love that, but for me, I'm just not the biggest fan of that. I don't know. I don't like transmedia. And because we have television shows and James Gunn said we're having video games and all this stuff, and Creature Commandos looks like it's going to be, actually it is going to be animated. It's just like we're doing all these mediums and they all tie into, you know, the main storyline, and it's just sort of like, I don't know. By the way, is the new Supergirl film, is this going to be the same Supergirl actress that plays Supergirl in The Flash? And then that again just confuses the continuity. I'm just a little confused. There are some things that I am looking forward to a new Superman. You guys know on this channel, I am not a fan of Man of Steel. And if anyone can get the Man of Steel right, it is James Gunn. I have faith because I think James Gunn understands what Superman is supposed to be way more than what Man of Steel portrayed him as, which is like this objectivist kind of depressed, mopey Superman, dark Superman, which we have gotten so much of that I'm just sick of, instead of this idealistic kind of good-hearted Superman character, which the comics are known for. So I think Superman by James Gunn is going to be really good, so I'm really looking forward to that. I am looking forward to The Brave and the Bold, you know, with seeing Robin and Batman together in a more serious story. That would be awesome. Booster Gold, he's a cool character. I'm looking forward to his television show. Even the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow show, based off of Tom King's book. Look, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to that even because Supergirl has also been a character that they haven't really gotten right, especially with the Supergirl television show. They just made her a female version of Superman, where she isn't like that in the comic books. She's more, like James Gunn said, she's more jaded. She has more of a harder shell than Superman. She's very different personality-wise than Superman is, you know? So it's very interesting to see that this is going transmedia, but Marvel didn't go transmedia until Phase 4, you know? And Phase 4, love it or hate it, it's been a very mixed bag of quality. It's been mostly not great, but there have been some really good stuff in there. Spider-Man No Way Home, phenomenal, fantastic. But then you have stuff like Thor Love and Thunder and Eternals, which are not that great. And I get that. But I mean, I personally think those films are okay, but a lot of people really don't like those films. And it's like, that's okay. And I know what you're thinking. Marvel's always been transmedia. We have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we had the Netflix shows like Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, we had The Runaways, we had Cloak and Dagger. But the thing is that those always felt like they were disconnected from the universe, and they didn't feel like they were canon. Besides maybe some aspects of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there was no real through line of a storyline that connected these shows into the Marvel movies. And it's basically confirmed now that even though they're using the same actors like Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, it's basically confirmed that those shows are their own canon, even though they're using their same actors. Or even if those shows are canon, they're just viewed as companion pieces to where they're not essential viewing. And this is pretty much evident in the fact that these shows like Daredevil and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff are rarely mentioned or not included in the box sets of the Infinity Saga. They're not, when you look at the list of the Infinity Saga or the Multiverse Saga, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Daredevil and stuff like that is not present. Well, Daredevil, the new show Daredevil is, but you get my point. I'm talking about the old Daredevil, the Netflix Daredevil. So, I'm not the biggest fan of Marvel becoming transmedia either. Branching off into television shows now to where if you don't watch something like WandaVision, Doctor Strange 2 is going to be like, what am I watching? It's going to be confusing. You have to watch WandaVision in order to understand Doctor Strange 2. Like, you have to. So that's the thing that's like a little, you know, I'm not a big fan of. And I know Marvel said we're not going to cater to people who haven't been keeping up with us anymore. And all of that, and I get that. But to me, it's a lot. And maybe it's just because Marvel is like spewing out way too much content at once, where they really need to focus on quality and not quantity, which they're supposed to be doing. But it's just a lot. It's just a lot. But I'm talking about Marvel now. Now I've gone on a tangent. But the point is, I'm not the biggest fan of transmedia, and that's what this is. And of course, Swamp Thing, that's cool. I never saw the show, but I heard the show was pretty good. By James Wan, ironically, who did that show. But it's like, then you got shows like Waller, and then you got these obscure characters like Creature Commandos and The Authority, which is pretty cool, you know, especially cool that they're bringing Wildstorm characters into the DCU. Like, that's pretty cool. Maybe we'll see like Vertigo characters and stuff like that start, because Vertigo's DC, right? Is Vertigo DC? I think Vertigo's DC. I should look that up. I should really look that up, honestly. Let me just look that up real quick. Is Vertigo DC? Because I don't want... Vertigo was an imprint of DC Comics. Okay. Yes. Okay. I just wanted to make sure and fact check before I said that. But yeah, it's really cool that, Wildstorm and maybe even Vertigo characters are going to be coming into the DCU. Maybe that means Watchmen can come into the DCU, a la Doomsday Clock or something like that. Even though that story was kind of like, maybe you could like adapt it into like something better, Like, that would be cool, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about certain aspects. But just overall, my friend David said it best. In terms of excitement and in terms of turning me around on this whole DC Universe thing, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it a 6 as well. Again, you can check out his video in the description. This is just... I don't know. People in the comments are seeming to like really like it. But for me, it just didn't really do much for me. But, I could be wrong. Who knows? Maybe in a couple years, I'll be like, holy crap, I was wrong. I was like completely wrong to doubt James Gunn and Peter Safran, because everything they've been putting out is gold. And honestly, with James Gunn behind a lot of this stuff, I feel like a lot of it is going to be really good, because the man has not missed so far when it comes to comic book movies, knock on wood. So, I am still looking forward to things. It's just, I was looking forward to not being confused, and this just confused me even more. And I get they had a tough road ahead of them, but if it was me, and I know it's not me, so whatever, but if it was me, I would just be like, look, after Aquaman 2 comes out, that is the last film in the Snyderverse. Everything that happened before Aquaman 2 is its own thing. We're starting from scratch. This is it. I would have appreciated that more than what this is. And again, I could be wrong, and hopefully I am, but that's all I have to say for you guys. Sorry, this is not going to be very edited. I've been filming for 22 minutes now, so I'm going to end it right here. But, alright guys, I'll see you guys later. Clever catchphrase. Bye-bye.